So I'm really glad to hear it because I'm diving into a topic that's more and more California homeowners are asking about, which is solar. Whether you're just starting to explore it or maybe you already have a system that's not working like you hoped, this conversation is for you. With me, I have Joshua, who's with Power. Tell me about what originally inspired you to get into the solar space and how has that shaped your approach to help homeowners today?
Yeah, so I just fell into the solar space. Like, I really didn't go after the solar space, to be completely honest with you. What it essentially looked like is we started out in the door-to-door clearing. Now, the door-to-door septic solar's got a pretty bad stigma when it comes to solar. Now, with that being said, we wanted to make a difference and still achieve California's goal on being energy efficient. And the shoulder growth approach, I just didn't feel was the most authentic. So what we did was is found ourselves in a space where we can identify and genuinely make sure that the homeowners is understanding and educated on exactly how solar works and why solar is important to them.
Okay. Okay. You talked a lot about service being the top priority and how you do things. Much like myself, I'm a service oriented, provide service, and give good information.
Right.
So tell me, what does that service first actually look like for you? Oh, well, yes. You're a homeowner throughout the whole process.
Yes, for me, what's been very big is offering solar as a service. What that means is you get a couple of different things with the service, like production guarantees, which when you finance or release a system, when that product comes from the bank is not in charge of the equipment, nor are they in charge of how much that equipment is produced. So when you purchase solar as a service, you're essentially purchasing that energy, which has a lot more guarantees and value to a home. I always like making sure when personally I'm taking myself, safeguarding myself and putting myself in the best position, which is why we're all for solar as a service, because that's what it is. It does for owners.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So what do you think is like some of the most important steps the California homeowner should take even before talking to someone like yourself?
Yes. I would say as a homeowner, the best thing they can do is become educated. Go to sites like the CalSA.org, the California Solar plus Storage. Become informed on what's happening on the solar end, between laws, regulations, how systems work. They can go to seia.org as well. It's another organization that really equips homeowners to saying, hey, is solar the right decision? Don't just take sell reps word for it, right? This is something that's going to make an impact. So you have a homeowner, it's going to make an impact to the client, and it's going to make an impact, obviously, to whatever organization you're registering solar from. But the best thing that you can do is just become informed. And if you're looking for somebody educated in that expertise, definitely reach out to somebody who's just not selling you hopes and dreams of solar. Then you're realizing that in the long run, you're not really giving true value to solar. How to be of impact to everyone.
Okay. Okay. For homeowners like myself who already have solar, but I don't feel stuck because I did some steps before, but they feel stuck in their plan. It's not working for them. What are some real world options that they may not know about?
So that's a great question. And it's a question that operates in a gray area because everybody's energy profile is different. Whatever finance product that they went through when they went with solar is different. Laws were different. There's so many different moving pieces to the puzzle when it comes to solar that for me to give you an answer offhand, it would essentially be a disservice. But as an example, somebody who is in, let's say, for instance, California, very multi-boring for the NIM program. You went from NIM 2 to, and you're looking and saying, hey, I'm actually just over consuming power. And you don't,
I think you need to define what NIM means because I know it, but I think you should define what that means and how it's different.
you're fine. And I'll be completely honest with you. I would say 50% of the solar reps that are probably out there don't even know what like NIM means or even how it works. So it's a net energy metering agreement. What that states is you are allowing to go through your utility provider to monitor the net energy that you are producing, not the gross energy, but the net energy. Okay. So prior to April 2023, there was NIM 2.0 that stated when you went solar or whatever electricity that you sent back to the grid for over generation solar power, that energy company would pay a 1-for-1 credit. What ended up happening is the energy company just realized they were paying a lot of money to people that were over generating. So what they decided to do is they decided to create a petition and go over to the California Public Utility Commission, create NIM 3. What NIM 3 does is says, hey, we're going to cut that 1-for-1 credit by 80%, 75%. Now, going back to their example is if you're in NIM 2 as a homeowner, you're over consuming, ends up happening is a lot of homeowners, they would like to add a secondary system because they're getting a large, what we call true up. When you add a secondary system that is still tied and intertwined to the grid, you will then opt out of your NIM 2 agreement and go to NIM 3, which is what we never want. Your grandfather in that NIM 2, we want to keep that 1-for-1 credit. Solution is to say, hey, I'm going to stay on NIM 2 with my initial system. And for my secondary system, I want it to be a non-grid exporting system. So that means with that non-grid exported system, you're going to place batteries on the home. You're going to store that power they use when the solar is not producing all after. It's stored up in those batteries, and that power from the batteries is then going into the home, and you're not consuming from your energy. That I would say that covers basis maybe about 80% of the situations that are out there.
And I'm sure you could talk about horror stories, and I've heard horror stories from people that just went and got solar because it was trendy. What's the outlook for them? Are they in a position where there are solutions that they can get out of that situation, or what?
So the best thing I would say is don't buy solar when you're emotional. That's the number one. That's the number one. That's the number one thing I can tell you is because as a former door-to-door sales rep, and this sometimes I feel like to brush up on my skills every once in a while. But as a door-to-door sales rep, it's just mainly right place, right time. And we understand that it's an emotional trader that says, hey, I need a solution. It's just getting ridiculous. Right. So the best thing for somebody to do is, like I said, research, but not be so emotional. And when you go back and say, hey, you know what, made a wrong decision, reach out to the organizations and figure out where exactly that you went wrong in the process of going solar and you already are solar. And then starting to figure out, okay, what is it that I can do to alter my plan, change my plan, work with the financer, the bank, or even in the event, or in some cases where homeowners have been completely pitched wrong at the door and they're able to get an attorney and say, hey, because I was pitched wrong and they told me this energy was going to be free to me, the equipment was going to be free to me, I actually had a case that says that they were misguiding and misleading me. A lot of times in there's cases, you can go to YouTube and look up cases where energy companies on the solar end have just said, hey, you know what, that's our fault. Just keep the system on top of the or they'll take it off and pay whatever you research is your best friend. You know.
And it's my experience with some homeowners that they didn't do research. They just took the word of the sales agent that they met and moved forward. I'm a big advocate of living in the home first, using as much energy as I can for that first year. So I have a true value, a luxury value of that property. So that I'm still walking as needed, but the home is pretty accurate. In the past, I've spoken of the fact that they can do up to 90% of what your kilowattage. But when we spoke, you said that's not entirely true.
Yeah. So the net energy metering agreement, which was NIM 1, would only allow you to produce 80% of your solar system generation power.
Okay.
Meaning, and I may have probably worded that wrong right now, but what that stated was, is NEM one, you can get 100% of your power from solar. 80% of it had to come from solar. The 20% had to still draw from your energy company.
Right.
NEM two came and they said, hey, you know what? You can put to not only just 100% of what you use from and consume from your energy provider, but now we can add an additional 100%. You can go up to 200.
Okay.
Now,
Well, you're a power company now.
now you're a micro generation station.
Yeah. What does that mean for a homeowner that they're now a micro generation station? What does that mean?
So what that means for that homeowner is they come in and they become pretty much their own power production partner. When they become their own power production partner because of the overage generation, that means they're going to be getting paid that 1-for-1 credit. So essentially, yeah, maybe they are paying a little bit more for their power that they would get from their energy company.
Yeah.
They're making up for that on the back end when the energy company is paying them back for that overage generation.
Energy companies aren't liking that.
No, they're not. They're actually, energy companies right now are petitioning for the California Public Utility Commission to remove the grandfathered NEM 2 agreement. So everybody that has went solar before, if they go away from that agreement, their solar really makes no sense financially, and it's crazy, right? So I've always been a big advocate since day one for what looks like grid independence, right? Like, even though we can't get you 100% away from the grid, we can separate you as furthest away from it. That's our golden intention. There may be some savings in it. There may not be some savings in it. We don't know because everybody's energy profile is different. But at the end of the day, if that's the goal, more likely than not, you're going to have a good taste for solar. There's something in our industry called the utility debt spiral. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Okay. So the utility debt spiral is just that inflation causes rates to rise and operations costs. So as those rates rise, people will go solar. Then more people go solar, the company loses money from going solar till they raise rates. And then it's just never ending cycles because the more people that go solar, your utility company misses out on opportunities and profit that they promised their shareholders.
I knew if I trigger a few things, be like, okay, let's talk about that. Because those are like really important. As you said again by our original conversation. There's a connection between like leases and ownership and what you call PAs. How do you help people figure out which option works best in their situation, and what's your take on that?
Yeah. Finance is only an option if you're really doing well in life. What I do, on my personal views, right? When you're working with me, you're working with strategists. I'm not trying to get you to go solar so I can make it make sense for me. I'm trying to get you to go solar so it can make sense for you. That's why I know all of the information on the back end. I'm not just a solar guy and knowing all of the stuff on the back end. But finance, it's for somebody who's doing well in life, and instead of just giving my hard-earned money away, I need to figure out how I can be a better steward of money. Would say, bank finance product. Anytime you incorporate a bank finance product, 9 out of 10 times the bank is going to be placing on the property.
They say it's warranted for the entire duration of it. I'm sure they've limited what the warranty covers.
Right.
More and more, but something breaks down or inverter breaks or shuts down or overheats or something, as a lease, they have to fix it.
Yeah, as a lease, they do. It's some leases, there's monitoring incorporated on older leases. Some of the monitoring is not incorporated, so also on the homeowner to make sure that the monitoring system and making sure that the equipment is functioning properly. And if that system is not functioning properly, guess what? You are consuming power. So now you're paying for that solar use, solar finance product, and you're paying a energy bill as well, which is never fun. So finance products, bank involved products, I'm not a big fan because of the position that it puts the house in and the homeowner in when it comes to on the property. That's something that I'm not a big fan of because when I go to sell my home or whatever obstacles there are, I'm looking to be as free as a bird. So the last one, which is the PPA, it's a service-based model. You can find that on the PA.gov. If you look up SPPA, the Solar Power Purchase Agreement, it'll give you the exact breakdown of how that model works from a federal level on how solar as a service works for the 25 states that PPAs are available instead of getting through finance product or your energy. Right. When you go PPAs, what we also call a TPO product, third party ownership product, a private investor comes in and they say, hey, we're going to put the equipment on the home, but because you're buying the energy from the equipment, we're not going to place a loan on your home. We're going to guarantee the energy. We're going to have service warranties that include equipment and labor costs. And then we're also going to put, because it's our equipment, a 1 million general liability insurance policy for us homeowners. Hope it's something that's happened for our system. We want to make sure that we're not essentially on the lower end of the stick.
Yeah. You're on the hook
So,
in case something does happen. You're like, the business is out of pocket. It's insured.
exactly. But the biggest value of that service is that you're getting energy that is guaranteed and you're getting back power. There's no other product out there that says, hey, for the energy that the system is producing, we're guaranteeing the amount of annual hours.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Okay. So situations that people run into, that especially as a real estate agent, people that they want to go buy a new house. Now they price the home without solar, and solar's on top. They have an affiliate that they usually have that they suggest. I don't think they're required to go with that affiliate, but I don't know for sure. That may be a business model for, depending upon the builder, for all I know. How does one, I don't think you can create an actual measurement of the solar that's needed for that home when it's brand new, and the new homeowner is going to have to put solar on there per mandated by law, California. Is there something that you should pay attention to buying a new home and requiring by law to put new solar panels on it?
Yeah, that's when you say that. This may not be a direct answer that you're looking for, but buy a home that has a private utility, city-based utility company, Banning Public Utility, Colton Public Utility, Riverside Public Utility. Their energy rates are going to just be way cheaper, right?
However, you don't have the choice in the matter.
You don't have a choice in the matter in which matter.
And you want to buy a house in Palm Desert, and this particular Palm Desert is connected to Southern California Edison or IID, the big.
So when it comes to somebody who is in the 4 power players, that's SCE, PG&E, SDG&E, LAWDE. When it comes to those 4 powerhouses, you're correct. You don't have a choice. The first portion of the question, I would say, is which solar company do I choose when I'm purchasing a home?
Assuming you have choice. Right.
Assuming you have a choice, which is a brand new home, which is a model home, right? Home that's 2025, fresh off the lot.
Right.
I'd love to answer that question. That is not my area of expertise. A lot of the times this is when a buyer comes in and they are buying that home. These are what the rules are. I didn't make the rules. You just got to abide by it. So I haven't really worked with too many customers on that end of the spectrum. So it would be a disservice for me to give you that answer.
I'm curious. No, I'm sorry. But when you are buying a brand new house, you don't have a history to be able to pull off of, there's going to be a projected energy usage. And whether you go over it or above it depends on the people involved in the electronics they have in place. And it's usually going to be a smarter, energy efficient home, for the most part, using LED lights and on green fridges and green AC units and things like that. Because those are the biggest money sucks, power
Right.
sucks, home. And I just wonder if you're able to do an agreement with a solar company that's a brand new home, be able to revisit the usage and adjust and say,
Yeah.
we need to revisit the actual usage of the house
Right.
going forward so that we can adjust. Is that even a possibility right now? Or is that I don't know you for you at this time?
I have some advice, and that's a great question. Number one, I would say is become as far away from the grid as you can. So the number one, I would say the number one thing and the number one strategy is in that particular case when somebody's buying a model track home, but say, hey, as they're building that home and whatnot, you have options in the homes when you're purchasing those new model track homes to say, hey, this is the flooring I want, blah, 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 whatever that looks. Build your solar system to maximize your energy production from that solar system. So if the roof layout looks great, max that baby out. And that's going to safeguard you because you're at that point only putting one system, you're not putting in additional system. So and that might look different, but if you do not know, anytime that you do not know your energy usage, max it out because there's not going to be any harm other than, hey, you know what? In the future, my solar bill's here, but maybe what I'm paying with my utility company is here. But if I built out a big system, my solar payment's probably going to be here. Well, in 10 years, your energy bill's probably going to be here. And I'm doing it on purpose so you can't see it on the camera.
Yeah.
Whereas they said, hey, I made this investment here. I'm just going to always stay here. Nothing's ever going to change because I'm not overly consuming from that electrical grid, that energy.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. In the beginning of this conversation, you talked about you get up to 200% of your usage. However, I mean, you know what that usage is. So it makes sense to say max it out, maximal allowable, and then probably a battery of some sort. Now, battery options are going to be coming out a little bit more sooner than later.
Yeah.
Sodium ion batteries,
Yeah.
lithium batteries, things like that, like Tesla,
Right.
like, that does it.
Right.
Swapping out a battery is a tricky situation. I know that Next Bolt has a sodium battery that they're trying to roll out. And I'm just mentioning it because I try to pay attention to it personally, but it is having the right batteries is right. Especially if you're in the desert where I'm at, and it gets
Right.
so hot that you might need to make sure that the battery is in a unit of some sort that keeps it at a nice temperature.
Yeah.
So they'll perform. Otherwise,
That's a great observation. What we've noticed over the years of the industry manufacturing batteries is we've had obstacles. And then as we have those obstacles, we pivot, right? And as we pivot, then we grow. So what we're seeing right now, what battery manufacturers are doing, like one of the ones that I personally love recommending and installing is Franklin, where they have a cooling assembly that doesn't allow that to happen. Now, it's equipment and things, sometimes things go wrong and whatnot, and all of those. We live in a life that nothing is perfect.
right.
Those margins are slim. And when we see that these companies, that's one of the things that I love about Franklin is when you have companies like Tesla and Samsung and whatnot that have already been a staple, they're not really looking at ways to be innovative. They're looking at ways of, hey, how is my marketing kind of doing? I'm looking at companies that are out there that want to stray away from the norm and really say, this is where the industry should be going. This is where we are going, pioneering that way. Franklin's got a super great battery where you can connect a portable generator to it. And they got some relays. It's going to stop the consumption of the grid. You're not consuming anymore. It's stopping it.
Okay.
And that's essentially like the furthest thing that you can do to get away from the grid and within being in more power players territory, becoming essentially off grid. Because if you're in those four power players territory, there's no way you can be off grid other than there not be any power into that particular problem.
What are the biggest shifts coming in California solar space, and how can homeowners position themselves to benefit from those changes?
The biggest shift that I can see is tying it back to that utility, that spiral, is those full power players, they always win. And when the law changes from NIM 3 to NIM 4, NIM 4 is just probably going to say, we're just not going to give you any credits at all. Or that's in the solar game without it. It's like, I'm not worried about getting credits back. I'm worried about figuring out how to alleviate as much pressure from the grid, because that pressure, that equipment is old and it needs to be repaired and serviced. We're really looking to relieve that pressure so we can reduce the amount of wildfires in California. But also, Mother Earth has been really good to us. Like, at least to me, and this gift that I have of life to say that I'm not contributing back to Mother Earth itself. Maybe it's on a minute level, but at least my impact is being a difference. And if we can get other people to on board with that golden mission, we can make a huge impact all the way around. And I know it's like a little tree hug and living it be, but when it comes down to it, Mother Earth, it's just been really
We haven't even tapped into the ability. We haven't even, and I don't pay attention that close to this because I'm busy doing my thing. But
right.
we haven't even tapped into the ability to make a machine that just reverses the carbon runoff out of the air.
Wow.
I think it's an option
Right.
that's been mass produced, probably from the big power companies. I get that. Be mindful of the earth, and this is a way we can be, but do it smart. We can try to provide potential solutions or things to seriously consider when you're thinking about going solar, so that it makes financial sense too.
Yeah.
And I believe you when you say that we're going to change it so that there won't be any credit back, which will make people buy Paris.
That's they already are.
I'd like to be a fly on the wall when they make that decision, so I can go make sure I buy plenty of battery stocks, take advantage of that if I can. That's just looking at that big picture.
I love how you say that. You brought in stocks, because that's something that I'll mention to the homeowner investing that you can do with that money that you're saving is hedge and diversify and buy that energy company stock.
Yeah, because it's going to rise.
Because it's going to rise. Exactly. You're saving and then you're investing. Tell your story. On the four powerhouses of the utility company, they actually really don't generate power. So I'm not sure if you're aware of that. They're strictly service providers.
Okay.
Okay. What you're paying on your utility bill, you'll see that it states transmission, distribution, wildfire. There's 5 to 8 different things you'll pay for franchise fees, interconnection fees, and so on. So the way that the power works in California, you're paying your utility energy service provider is the transmission fee to transmit that power. And then as you transmit that power, it steps down into a substation, which is what you guys know as a grid. And then it goes over to distribution lines, which are the smaller, like wooden poles or the ones on the ground.
Yeah.
Then it'll go to your guys' meter on your home and counts what you guys are using. Then it goes into your guys' panel, which has your breaker box. And then it goes through all the circuits in your guys'. So exactly what you're paying for is a service, not for power.
So where does most of California's power come from again?
They come from generation plants, like nuclear generation plants. Coal.
Not located in California.
California law won't allow that. The legislation passed the law. I think it was like 1995. You're paying for in your bills. It's nuclear decommissioning. So we've decommissioned nuclear power generation,
Which is the antithesis of green energy, all because they fear nuclear's ability to blow up on us.
They just care about if you're paying for it.
Right. That you're paying for mostly for distribution, all those little fees. They can break it down by the per kilowatt hour of distribution.
You add up everything on your bill and say it's a bill for 400. You add up everything in your bill and come out to $250. Distribution, transmission, nuclear decommissioning, wildfire, all of those things. Why is my bill $400? Well, that 150 is profit.